Hello, and welcome to the Real Estate and Business Success Podcast. I'm your host, Ben Jimmerson, your Southeast Alabama luxury realtor with first-class real estate wiregrass. In this podcast, we're diving deep into the intersection of real estate and business to uncover what makes successful entrepreneurs tick. Each week, I'll be interviewing top business owners and investors from the Wiregrass region and beyond, exploring how they've achieved enduring success and how their strategies can apply to both real estate and other industries. Whether you're a real estate professional or a business enthusiast, get ready to gain valuable insights, discover new strategies, and elevate your own success. Let's get started. Welcome, everyone, to the Real Estate and Business Success Podcast. I'm your host, Ben Jimmerson. Thank y'all for tuning in today, whether you're listening in on a podcast or watching the video on my YouTube channel, Wiregrass Veteran Realtor. Today, I have with me Jake Dixon, husband, father, CEO, and founder of the Locker Room Coaching. Thanks for coming on the podcast today, Jake.
Awesome to be here, man. Appreciate it. And it was good to see you earlier on one of our trainings as well.
Yeah, that was a great training earlier. I always appreciate your trainings, and your knowledge is definitely sound, and more people need to hit the locker room up. You know, if you're a realtor or a broker owner and want to get on that. But real quick, so how long have you been in business now?
Yeah, the Locker Room started in 2016, August of 2016. So a little over 8 years now.
That's awesome, man. Congrats. You know, they say first year is always the toughest, and if you can make it 5 years, you know, you're usually going to be good to go. So with what you know now, after 8 years of business, what would you tell yourself that's just getting started in business, some lessons that you've learned?
Oh my gosh, that's a big question. Several directions I can take it. One of which is read the Blue Ocean Strategy book sooner. So I don't get royalties off books, but that's definitely one any listener wants to add it to their list. And the point of me saying that is because it allows you to think differently. I've always believed or subscribed to the idea that success, whatever that is defined as by you, is generally found by observing what the masses are doing and doing the exact opposite, or going the exact opposite direction, because we have this tendency to operate in this herd mentality. And so Jake now would have told younger 8 years ago Jake to read that book or adopt that philosophy, because I found myself over the years kind of competing with the Joneses or benchmarking and all this business language. Then I drift into this competition mindset. Well, I need to do that same thing, but for less, or how can we do that same thing just a little bit better? And I'm not saying those are entirely inaccurate concepts to pursue as a business owner. And yet I have found if you only adopt that mindset, you're constantly in a state of reaction versus being proactive and not just playing the game, but changing the way that the game is played.
No, I definitely resonate with that, man. You probably saw me smiling when you were talking about when people are going one way, you go the opposite way. And that's always been my train of thought, because, you know, sometimes you go the other way and it was the wrong way, but 9 times out of 10, it's going to be the right way to go for sure. So like when you say that, like what comes to mind why you say that?
Yeah, man. I mean, part of my origin story of how the locker room even exists, had I followed the trend line of how everybody else fell into leadership and how everybody else was supposed to have a certain behavioral style, and that meant you were going to be successful, I guess I'm just kind of the redheaded stepchild. And part of that is because when I got back into real estate, I sold one home. I'm running a national coaching company in real estate, and I'm sitting here having sold one home. Okay. And it's not because I sucked. It's because I sold it really fast. And I was attending a training with the owner of this brokerage at the time. And she calls me and says, basically, I want to talk to you. I want to interview you to be what's called the team leader of our market center. And I'm like, what? I'm the new guy. I've sold one home. What do I like? Where's the hidden camera here? And so combine that with the fact that so I got that job. And then later when I realized it wasn't my passion to recruit and manage an office as much as it was to coach and develop the agents, is when I made the conscious decision to be a real estate coach. Same thing. although I had some experience under my belt managing an office and recruiting people, still I've only sold one home. So there was that little voice that you're not good enough, you're not worthy. Not to mention, I took a personality assessment, which was supposed to tell you whether or not you would be a good coach and that sort of thing. And I was a 0.52 medium fit on this assessment. So I shouldn't have even been hired as a coach because I've only sold one home. The behavioral assessment says I'm not going to be any good, blah, 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 blah. And yet it only took one person to give me an at bat for me to prove everybody wrong, let the haters be your motivators. And after the very first year of starting this coaching entity inside of a brokerage, we had become the number one program for this particular company, generated $1 million of company revenue that first year from largely brand new, lesser experienced agents. And as they say, the rest is history. So long-winded answer to say, if you're just following the herd, following the trend line, doing what everybody else is supposed to do, and you drift into that same mentality versus a blue ocean mentality, good luck to you. But I subscribe to blue ocean versus competing in the shark-infested bloody waters of that red ocean where everybody else is competing for the same little bit, and all this whole beautiful ocean that's blue and pure is waiting for you over here if we just get out of this mess.
I love that, man. I definitely resonate with that. One of my earlier podcast episodes, it reminds me about talking about how, like in my area specifically, I always say we're like 5 to 20 years behind, depending on what you're talking about. And so, like literally, if you go to a bigger city, metropolis area, and find something that's working and bring it here, then it's more than likely going to work, and that's going the other way than everybody else is going. There's certain businesses, I won't say what types, but there's one business type where there's like way too many of those types of businesses here in the area. And it's like, well, why are you opening up another one? Yeah, somebody can probably provide better customer service or different products, and over time, grow to be the more known or number one in that specific category in that industry. But man, what if you went the other way and or start providing something that's not even here at all,
Exactly.
so I love that, man. That's awesome that you did that, and it's crazy to see where you are right now. Like most people would have just given up and said, whatever, threw their hands up in the air, moved on, and probably still doing the same thing that they're doing right now. So congrats
Well,
to
it's a
you on that.
constant reinvention. And one thing I'll add to that for anybody that is also maybe resonating with is when you do different and it's a little, against the grain, against the opposite direction, with that comes the territory that you need to expect ahead of time of haters, skeptics, doubters, whatever label you want to give that group of people, because it's different. And it threatens the status quo. It threatens, the way things have always been done. This is just how we do things. And so when little old you comes along and kind of shakes the tree a little bit, careful, well, not so careful, but be ready for adversity, naysayers, people like that. And that was another lesson I had to learn, because what we did in the company at the time that we did, we had to thread a very fine needle to pull off this feat that is who we are today. And I won't get into all that. There's just some political headwinds and things that you don't do that here, but we did it with precision. By the time we were at 100 offices plus, there was nothing anybody could do about it. We were too big now to take down, where it would have created an entire rebellion, right? So there's a lot of strategy, a lot of chess moves that while others are playing checkers, you're over here playing chess, making moves that are 12 steps ahead before they've even thought of it.
That's one of my favorite sayings. While you're playing checkers, I'm playing chess, and I'm one move away to winning. Man, I love that so much. So like as far as, like actual starting of a business goes, are there things that, you wish you would have done differently, or that you could give advice to somebody who's starting up a business, as well as like managing and scaling a business?
Man, yeah, big topics, all of that. Number one, I'm a book junkie, so forgive me. But again, another great one I'm wrapping up right now is called The Cold Start Problem. So in the cold start problem, that's what the book is literally about, is starting a business from nothing. It talks about the network effect and really tapping into networks. In other words, you build small in order to build big. If I wanted to create a mastermind network, I'm better off not just saying, ooh, I've got the entire United States. Look at all these 1.4 million realtors. Good luck. You need to start here and create the presence, create a mini network. And all of a sudden you start to connect the dots and it creates this spider web where everybody and everything is interconnected. So I'm all about thinking big, dreaming big, setting big goals. But after you've done that, you've got to reverse engineer that sucker all the way down to the now, to the granular, because your scalability probably happens small at first, and then that network effect hits and it scales and it goes viral and people start referring and talking about you. So get small to get big is, I guess, part of the point there. Get a coach, get a mentor. Nobody succeeds alone. Listen to podcasts like this one to gain insights from people who have maybe not so far ahead, but they're a chapter ahead in the book, or
They're
they've
where you
made
want to
the
be.
dumb mistakes. They paid that stupid tax for you that you can prevent yourself from having to pay. So there's just a lot packed into that question and my answer as far as things I wish I would have done different or how to scale a business. I wrote a course called The 13 Steps to Building a Scalable Business. And it's a roadmap. It's not the way, but it's a way looking backwards that I wish somebody would have said, here you go, here's a blueprint, follow this.
Yeah, that's so true. Absolutely true. Something you were talking about, networking groups and staying, maybe smaller instead of trying to go wide and big at first just makes me think about, in general with real estate and being a realtor. I'm a big quote guy. So one of the quotes I know is the riches are in the niches. And so that's kind of the same concept is
Yeah,
focus small on one area, one thing, and let that grow.
it really is. I mean, that's, you got to be known for something. You can be a wandering generality or a meaningful specific. And it's not to say I'm going to turn down business from other things that maybe don't fit my niche or my ideal target audience avatar. It's not that at all. It's not so literal. But when I'm so clear on who I am, who I'm meant to serve, and the solution that I provide them to a problem, that channeling, that kind of sniper rifle approach allows your messaging in your marketing, and all of that is dictated from being very clear on who I'm meant to serve and how I go about serving them. Will I pick up some ancillaries and people from overflow along the way? Of course. Serve them too. But for us, as an example, we started out as a real estate coaching company for the 87% of agents who don't make it in this industry within their first few years. That's who we are. We're a new agent or a dual career agent coaching company. Well, that's odd. Why? Because through my research, Blue Ocean, there was no shortage of real estate coaching companies out there. Let's be honest. However, the pattern was all of them were targeted for the already successful agent, the mega agents, the people that could afford $1,000 a month or whatever. And all we did was look the opposite direction. Well, hey, if there's an 87% failure rate and 90+% of agents, according to NAR, never sell 25 or more homes, who's serving this group? And it just so happens I was obsessively, unapologetically passionate about that group of people as well. And so to help agents launch their career, have them grow up in our minor league farm system so they can make it to the majors. That's one of our niches of how we were different. And now we largely work with independent broker owners. Do I still pick up a Keller Williams here and there? Of course I do. But we're working in coaching and developing the broker owners now, and we are intensely focused on the independent broker owners for our bread and butter business model now. So it's just different, those little subtleties that tend to make a big difference.
I love that that's who you were focused on in the beginning because it is such a needed area. Honestly, it's something I've been thinking about a lot because I've noticed the same thing is there's not a lot of coaches out there that serve the new agents. And, what a way to, if you can get them in, they'll probably be there forever because
Yep.
you were the person that helped them grow, especially if you've got, like a succession plan for them to move up into the process. So speaking of agents, why do you think most agents fail within their first 2 years?
Yeah, I guess that was a good segue to that one, wasn't it? A lot of reasons. I'll take this a direction maybe of something that I call strength zone. So Unpopular opinion, maybe, speaking of quotes. I wrote a whole course of why I believe success lives outside your comfort zone is complete BS. I I know the person who said it, very smart, way smarter than me. I think that's absolute crap. Here is what I believe. First of all, we have to dissect what does success mean. My fear for your listeners and viewers right now is when we say, oh, that person is so successful, what are we really saying? Most often what we're really saying is that person makes a lot of money. Is that where we've come? That success equals the amount of money? I hope not. Because how many people, how many celebrities, how many whoever that sometimes even take their own life have all the money in the world, but their relationships are crap. They're broken. The rest of their spouse, they're divorced, all these things. And so, first of all, I've got to figure out, well, what is success to me? How do I define it? And then I'm going to circle back and ask that question again. Does my definition of success really have to live outside of my comfort zone? I don't think so. I think it lives by expanding your strength zone, starting in this bullseye, identifying what are your unique talents and gifts? What are those transferable skills from a prior career that you can use for this one? So it's more natural, it's more flowing. What is that behavioral profile of yours that, hey, I suck at a lot of things, but this is what I'm really good at, and apply that stuff. And then we begin to go out and out and out. And I have a whole graphic and thing around this. That, circling back to your question, is why I think a majority of agents fail. Is number one, they come in with false expectations. This is not HGTV. But second of all, they were never equipped with how to be a business owner. They're just so worried about staying out of realtor jail, getting through pre-licensing school. They don't realize that I have to go talk to people. This is a contact sport, otherwise known as lead gen and prospecting. Well, once they realize that reality, their brain instantly goes to cold calling FSBOs, expireds, doing all this uncomfortable stuff. After all, that's where success lives, rather than finding what works for you. If you're naturally gifted at graphic design and you're super creative and you're an inward, introspective person, great. You're not at any disadvantage for the self-proclaimed high I personalities who are going to go in and be the life of a party. You just find your way, and I think a lot of agents get shoved into this industry. The leadership of those agents has this attitude of, well, the good ones will make it, everybody else won't anyways. And they never slow down to take the time to figure out what makes this person tick, what are their transferable skills and all those strength zone qualities that can apply to the way they go about lead generating, prospecting, and that's how they go about establishing relationships that result in listings and buyers.
I absolutely agree with you, man. So, speaking of agents that fail in the first 2 years, what do you think they should focus on to not be that in that failure rate?
So I came up with an acronym. So it's a little funny, haha. So CRMs, but it's not what you're thinking. I'm not talking about the technology of a CRM, but it's CRMs as an acronym. So if you're listening to this and you're an agent, write this down. C is consistency, and I'll circle back. The R stands for relationships. The M stands for market knowledge. And the S stands for skill set development. I think this has always been true, but it's especially true post-COVID, where consistency, like we were just saying, whatever those levers, those tactics and strategies are, make sure that it aligns with who you are. It feels good. It lends itself to your strengths. And make sure then that you build a calendar that supports consistency around those activities. Time on task over time. I earned the nickname TOT years ago because I said time on task over time a lot, apparently. And a lot of agents, specifically, business owners too, try things. They just dip their toe in the water. Well, open houses didn't work, so I'm going to try this. Well, I didn't. No. What is that thing? Do the right thing long enough. Relationships, obviously, we got to love on people. They want to hear from you. If your first reaction is slimy, salesy, it feels inauthentic to go lead gen, then replace the word lead with need. How about need generation? Put the heart of the relationship at the center versus some ulterior motive of what's in it for you. That's why it feels gross, because you're booty calling people when you need something, okay? Instead of saying, hey, Ben, it's Jake, long time no chat. check up, ask, is there anything you need right now? Anything I can connect, anyone I can connect you to? Anything I can help with? You got any honeydew lists coming up this fall around the house? Need generate. What are their needs and how can you help? The buying and selling thing will figure itself out. Relationships, market knowledge. It is no longer relevant for us to be professional door openers. Technology is the great equalizer, and trust me, that same technology is trying to replace you right now. AI and all the things. I'd rather have emotional intelligence over artificial intelligence. It also requires us to know the market. Hey, how's that real estate thing going? It's good. It's good. Rates are coming down. Like, is that you listening? It's not good enough anymore, man. You should be able to say, Ben, hey, great. Thanks so much. Great question. Listen, that neighborhood over there that I specialize in, did you know last month there were 7 new homes that went on market? And in the same time, there were 5 that went under contract for an average sale price to list price ratio of 98.5%. And the average days on market on those is 27 days. Dude, now you sound like an expert, the local economist of choice versus some, oh, it's good. And then finally, skill set. I know these are long-winded answers, man. I'm so sorry, but skill set development.
No, I love it.
Like, what are we doing, people? Some of y'all are resisting simple stuff like script and role play. It's like Allen Iverson. Practice? We talking about practice? Yeah, we are. Because even the best of the best. I played college and professional baseball, Ben. You know that. I know the guys that we're all watching on television right now in the playoffs. I know what they do all day. Most people just see on screen for a 2-hour game. But they show up to the field hours in advance of game time. And you know what the hitters do? They put a ball on a tee. They take hundreds of swings hitting a baseball off of a tee every day. Why? Because they're working on blocking and tackling, the fundamentals, the basics of the game through practice, so that when the game time shows up, it comes secondhand to them. It just flows, right? They don't have to think anymore about mechanics because they've practiced, and they practice at game speed. And I've got agents who refuse to script and role play. They don't want to rehearse for 15 minutes a day, handling objections, and they'd rather practice on a real life client. In what world does that make sense? So, sorry, long-winded answer.
No, man, you keep talking all day long. I love listening to what you have to say. You know, what I heard in there, you know, you talked about consistency, and then kind of another reference for niching down again as well. So, you know, any realtor listening into this, take note to these key words: consistency, niching down. And then you were talking about baseball players and how many reps they take, how many swings they take, so they don't have to think about it again. And you're using that reference to reference such as role playing, script playing, as far as cold calling. But you know, that applies to anything, like any task or skill. Being a real estate agent, being a business owner, you have to do that over and over again. You have to practice. And you know what comes to my mind is muscle, also muscle brain memory, like you were saying, to where you don't have to think about it. So when you're doing it, eventually over time, you know, the more you do it, the easier it gets. And then it just makes it a whole lot more simple. You know, I can definitely relate to that. Other people have different characters and personalities, but most people coming into starting a business, or if you're a realtor, real estate agent coming into this, nobody wants to cold call. You know, nobody wants to get on the phone and make those phone calls or really do anything because you're so scared. And you just have to realize that everybody's been there. Don't judge a book by its cover. Somebody's probably at chapter 20 when you're at chapter 1, but they started at chapter 1 too. They're just further down the road. So, you know, you just got to do it and fail forward.
Yeah. I used to, prior to real estate, I run an indoor baseball training facility and for 3 years. And it was mine. I gave kids lessons and camps and clinics and did the thing, right? And I would always use that example to the kids of how the major leaguers, what they do every day, just like I shared a moment ago. And now in real estate, I've learned to use my time running a baseball facility as another analogy. I would say this: the same way I would teach a kid at 12 years old to grip a bat, to hold the baseball the right way, is literally the same thing, same way those guys that are making millions of dollars a year do it on television. It's literally no different. The fundamentals don't change. How you grip the ball. And so in real estate, I say, Listen, just like in Little League, when they're throwing 55 miles an hour at you, but the fundamentals didn't change, so goes Major Leagues. Nothing different. It's just that the game speeds up. They're not throwing 55 anymore, they're throwing 95 miles an hour. So the game didn't change, the game just sped up. So in real estate, the same thing, the blocking and tackling, the fundamentals to close 12 homes a year is literally the exact same thing to close 112 homes a year. The fundamentals don't change. The game just speeds up, right? And so to your point with this whole time on task, do the right things long enough, compound effect, we have a challenge. Here's something crunchy for your listeners that we call the 5 to 25 challenge. Okay. Most agents say they want to make six figures in real estate, and I'll dial that in to say, no, let's help you net six figures, not just earn it, net it. And most markets, that's about a couple dozen sales a year to net six figures. So the 5 to 25 challenge concept is, you can check my math majors, talk to 5 people a day for 5 days a week for 50 weeks out of the year. That's 1,250 real estate conversations over the course of a year, 5 a day. Okay. I gave you weekends off, and I gave you 2 weeks off for vacation holidays. You're welcome. So I have tracked this religiously for 8 years, that for lesser experienced newer agents, there's a 2% conversion rate on conversation to new piece of business. 50 to 1. For every 50 conversations, it will yield you one new piece of business. So what's 1,250 times 2%? Yep, 25. 25. Time on task over time. Do the right thing consistently long enough, right? That's that muscle memory thing that you were saying. Why do agents fail in their first 2 years? Even if they're doing the activity, they don't do it long enough. Because it's that muscle memory thing. I haven't worked out, Ben, in a long time. If I went to the gym today and I thought I'm going to max out on bench press and squat, what the hell's going to happen to me tomorrow? I'm not going to be able to get out of bed. I'm done. I'm sore. And agents enter this business maybe the same way. They got to build that lead gen muscle up. They go day one all sorts of excited until the honeymoon phase wears off by day 30. And they're like, oh, I'm burnt out. I tried it all. I've talked to everybody in my database. Yeah, right. But they went from 0 to 60 like that, and they're sore. Are you surprised? So the 5 to 25 challenge, I don't care if you're full-time or part-time, it doesn't matter. Everybody can talk to 5 people a day. We're getting the repetitions in. I can put more 45s on the bar or whatever later. I can go from 5 to 8, 8 to 10, 10 to 20 a day if you want, but just do 5. Let's get the reps in and worry about the weight later, so I'm not so sore tomorrow that I can't even move. I'm trying to be metaphorical. Hopefully that's landing.
No, it makes complete sense. What I'm hearing is, when one, just get started, and 2, don't overcomplicate things. I think a lot of people do that all the time as humans. Just in general, we always overcomplicate things. We make something way bigger than it actually is, and talking about analogies, this one is really like dumbed down. And when people hear it, at first they can't make sense of it because they feel like it doesn't compare. But we all had to learn how to tie our shoes, and now we don't even think about it, right? We know exactly how to do it. It's not even a thought. You're probably talking to somebody else, watching TV, maybe eating something at the same time while you're tying your shoes. And so it's the same concept with me saying that. It's like we had to start somewhere and learn how to tie our shoes, and that applies to anything that you do.
The first time we do anything new, we suck at it. But
Yep.
The more we do it, the less we start to suck, and eventually you kind of get good, just like tying your shoes.
That's it. I don't think I remember this correctly, but it's something about if you put in like 100 hours a year, you're going to be like in the top 10% of people that are good at whatever it is. Like if you started playing the guitar and put in 100 hours, you're definitely going to be up there, actually good at playing the guitar or whatever it is you do. You mentioned something earlier. I can't remember exactly what it was, but it was basically just saying that there's really no difference between one thing or the other. And it made me think about a video I watched the other day where this brand new agent came in. It was his first day in the office and first day cold calling. And they just got done with some training on doing cold calling, script, role playing, and stuff like that. and he was sitting there, hadn't made a call yet, and he was listening to some other agents make their calls, and they were all calling, lower price range. And he was just sitting there thinking, I guess he had some experience in business or something before. I don't know where he, thought about this, but he was like, what's the difference in all these people that are calling, let's just say like, two to $500,000 homes versus a $5 million home? And he was like, I literally just went in our lead source and found the highest priced home. It was a $5 million home. And he calls the guy, doesn't answer, but he leaves a voicemail. The guy calls him back, and his first day, first call, first listing, $5 million home, because there's really no difference. Yeah, there might be like some small things, right? Because there's probably some different items that maybe a $5 million homeowner put in their house that you're not going to see, two to $500,000 homes. But it's just crazy to think about that. Like, we just overcomplicate things when really it's the same thing. There's not much difference.
Man, I love what you just said. It's this constant ping pong match of logic versus emotion, right? And sometimes we let our feelings dictate something that shouldn't be so feely, because business is not emotional. It's numbers, it's logic, it's analytical. So, quick story, Ryan and Heather Bigger, and if they're ever listening to this, hello. They were one of the very first coaching clients I've ever had. Now, Ryan had just gotten laid off 9 months prior from his U.S. food truck job, earning about $60K a year because he had a shoulder injury. Goes back to work. Week later, they let him go. Heather was staying at home with their 3 young children, so don't have an income. Long story short, they were living off food stamps. Had to borrow each $500 because a friend suggested, well, why don't you go get your real estate license? You'd be good at that, I think. Nobody wanted to hire a food truck driver at the time. And so they borrowed $500 each from their parents and living on food stamps, completely in a corner, had no way out. Their very first year, they did $10 million of production, 35 closings, $300,000 of GCI, which is 5 years of Ryan's former salary. 5 years, their very first year in real estate. Why am I sharing this? I'm sharing this because that very first year, I had a front row seat to what was going on. I know the real story. Their first 3 months, goose eggs, no closings. But I had a tracking system in place that tracked appointments, conversations, added to your database, number of trainings attended, stuff like that. All the leading indicators. Every single week, they were number one on my leaderboard for that stuff. And they come into my office in December, board dues, all that stuff is getting ready to be due, 0 closings so far, and we're in tears. We're just crying, both sides. And I looked at them and I said, I don't know what y'all have to do, but you got to scratch and claw and figure out a way to stay in this business, because if you, Scout's honor, swear to me that all this other information that you've reported in is true, and it is, something is about to happen for you, because in business, there's a law that it takes 90 days to create or lose momentum. What I do today shows up in 90 days. They were at that 90-day mark. I'm like, guys, you got to figure this out. I don't have a crystal ball, but something is going to happen really soon if all of this other information is true. 2 closings in January, 5, 5, 4, 5, 3. They closed 35 homes that first year, 300 grand. Here's why this is important. They knew their numbers. They knew that for every 28 conversations, they got an appointment. For every 47 conversations, they got a new piece of business. It was down to a science. Remove emotion, run your business by logic, analytics, okay? What did that mean? Well, their average sales price was $200,000. Let's call it 3%. That was an average GCI of $6,000 per closing. Fair? Take $6,000 divided by 47, 48 conversations to one new piece of business. The number was $125. In other words, every conversation they had, yes, no, slammed door in the face, hung up on, was worth $125. So if they went and talked to 5 people, 10 people today, they just made $1,250. It just hadn't shown up in their bank account yet. It's this game we got to play. Last thing, another person in my program who heard this story, his name is Will. Will, after hearing this, drove up to Wells Fargo, pulled out $1,000 cash money in the form of $100 bills. And from that day forward, I didn't know it at the time. He later told me from that day forward, When he's sitting there making his calls, doing lead gen, he had that stack of money literally sitting next to him. And every person he talked to, he slid himself a $100 bill every day, anchoring and cementing the fact that I am making money. It just hasn't shown up yet. Even if all 10 people today said, no, don't ever call me again. Do the right thing long enough, the money-making activities and the results will absolutely follow, guaranteed.
That's so awesome. I just got chills sitting there listening to that story, and that's one of the things that I try to get agents to realize is, and it's tough depending on your situation, right? I can't help that. I can't help somebody's situation, but the one word that's going to stick out is you got to have patience, and I let them know that whatever you do today, I'll say 30, 60, 90 days, because you never know, what can happen. I've seen, what is like the industry average is something like it takes 6 months to see your first check, or in their case, 90 to 120 days. So close to 6 months. I know it was for me, but if you can just have patience, if you can have that grit, that determination to listen to what somebody who's already been there is telling you to do, like you said, it's going to come to fruition. And like you said earlier, agents get pushed into this industry and they don't really know what it's like. I try really hard to just be very honest with people up front. And I'm like, look, you're probably not going to make anything for 6 months. You could make something sooner. I did see one guy, a couple of guys, it depends on your sphere of influence and how hard you're willing to work to begin with. But one guy got a closing his first month and every month after that as a brand new agent. So it just depends. His sphere of influence was way different than a lot of people. So he kind of had a leg up, an edge on that. But at the same time, he could have let it flop by not doing any work. So patience is a big thing. You just got to be patient. Everybody's expecting to make a lot of money and make it now. And I love that you mentioned everybody, the kind of the magic number is like $100,000, right? Like you said, everybody wants to make $100,000 first until you make it and you realize it's not that much money nowadays. I mean, it's definitely more if you're not making that. But I love that you said, how about we net that? And to me, like when I think about that, when you said that, that's the one thing that kills me. Like when you go and you hear like, I'm not hating on anybody, but like another podcast or a webinar and they're like, oh, well, we'll help you make $100,000. Well, they're talking about gross. Or somebody says, I make this much money. Okay, that's great. What do you actually net? What are you making after all expenses, after taxes are paid? Show me that, because somebody could say they make $100,000 but only net $20,000. Another person could make $100,000 and net $80,000. So, it just depends on how somebody's running their business, and not a lot of people are willing to show you that. I think for the first time ever, I was on a training call yesterday about, doing YouTube as a real estate agent. And the guy literally showed his 1099. He was like, I've made $1 million through YouTube. And he pulled it up. He shared his screen right there, and then even shared like a bank account and something else. So it was just like, here's proof. I'm not just telling you I did it. I'm literally showing you. But I feel like a lot of people say that they do, but was it really? So
Yeah. Ben, I coached a $150 million a year team lead out of Arizona years ago. 150 million is what his team did. Pretty good, right? As far as production, not bad. But guess what? Dude was broke as a joke. He literally was in the red. His business was not profitable. Overspending, overstaffed, splits and compensation things that just buried him. Didn't make sense.
that's nuts.
But ego-wise, on stages, getting all the awards and plaques and recognition, right? And yet, there's folks like you and I sitting in chairs at conventions, seeing people like that cross stages, comparing our insides to their outsides, never having a clue of the real story on whether or not they're even profitable. So we've got to be very careful, to your point, playing that comparison game in any business, because you never know what's going, unless they're going to show you their P&L like this gentleman did for you. Okay, you're legit. But you might not be so quick to want to trade places with people, because last time I checked, hey, to each their own, man, closing 12, 24, 36 homes a year with a VA or a part-time admin, probably maybe a transaction coordinator, single greatest, most profitable in real estate, that is, business model. That person will net more money many times than somebody doing a milli, of GCI with their team.
What a lot of agents don't realize is, like for our model and the way that it's set up specifically, or not even just our model, but other models, a lot of agents don't realize that some of them, the top producers, are making more than the brokerage owner is
Oh my
making.
God.
So,
Many times they are.
yeah.
Yes. Yeah. No question.
Well, man, I appreciate you being on the podcast today. Your, insight is invaluable. I hope somebody got something from this today. How can people reach out to you?
Oh man, I'm on all the socials, but my biggest one is Facebook. Maybe that dates me. I don't know. It's not cool anymore, perhaps. But look me up on Facebook, Jake Dixon. We're all over there with the Locker Room Real Estate Coaching and Training Company as well. I think it's facebook.com/Jake Dixon 29. If somebody wants to shoot me a message or a friend request, love to chat.
And you've got a book too. It's
I do. So funny you should ask. So, in fact, I'm approaching my 1 year when I went and wrote this bad boy. This was 8, 9 years in the making. It's called Cannonball: 12 Success Principles That Children Can Teach Us About Life and Business. So, using the stories and different learning lessons from my young daughters, molding those examples into business lessons, life lessons. And so it's just a fun read. It comes with a workbook and all the good stuff too. No, it's not on Audible yet. Yes, I plan on it, but people can go to jake-dixon.com if they want to check it out.
awesome, man. I appreciate it. Thanks everybody for tuning in on today's episode. Make sure you check out the show notes or description for links to different resources on how to start, manage, and scale a business, as well as resources for real estate agents. And we'll see you on the next episode. Thanks for joining me on the Real Estate and Business Success Podcast. I hope you enjoyed today's insights and are ready to apply these strategies to your own business endeavors. If you found value in the episode, please subscribe, leave a review, and share it with others who might benefit. Stay tuned for more interviews with successful entrepreneurs and actionable advice to drive your business forward. Until next time, keep pushing for success, and remember, success is just around the corner.